Hello, Dave and I today are going to be introducing to you our first online calculator for laundromats. This is hopefully our first of many, but our first calculator is on washer pricing. We often have people come to us and ask us, how do you know you're pricing your washers correctly? How do you know what your profit margins are? So we decided to use our knowledge of the industry and our experience with four laundromats to devise a calculator to help you do just this. So it basically takes your expenses and then your volume of laundry that is done and turns that into what should you charge for each size of machine. And I'll be showing you exactly how to use this calculator in just a bit. But first, Dave's going to talk to us a little bit about laundromat pricing.
Yeah, so first of all, to be clear, this is pricing your self-serve washers, is what this calculator is designed to teach you to do. But we do want to throw a few caveats out because basically what this calculator does is it teaches you functionally, if you wanted to make a certain profit margin relative to your revenue, what would you need to charge for each particular poundage of machine, 20s, 30s, 40s, 60s, 80s, etc. But we didn't want to mislead anyone into thinking that somehow, just because the calculator says you want to charge this price, that means you can, right? So I think there's two kind of caveats here. One of them is, Carla, if you want a 30% margin on your self-serve business, this calculator will walk through how to do that, and you just put in that you want a 30% profit. And it will calculate that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your market will support that price. So maybe this calculator will tell you that you want to charge $8 for a 40-pound machine. That doesn't mean that you can, in your market, relative to your competitors and your value proposition, charge $8 for a 40-pound machine. So we just want to be clear when it comes to competitive analysis and value proposition and market saturation and all these things that factor into what you can charge relative to your competitors. That's not what this calculator is doing. Now, at the other end of the spectrum, just because you want to charge $8 for a 40-pound washer doesn't actually mean that your market won't support you charging more than $8 either, right? So it can go on the two ends of the spectrum. And we just want to be real clear about what this calculator is calculating and what it's not taking into consideration. So your competitive analysis, if you're not familiar, on our website, we have a free competitive analysis checklist that you can download. You can go to your different competitors and kind of secret shop them, and that will help you figure out what your value proposition is, your market differentiators, and things like that. That's how you're going to determine if you can charge this price. This calculator is just going to say, based on what profit you want to make on this business, this is what you need to charge at a minimum. So just wanted to be really clear there before we dive into it.
Okay, so I'm going to jump right in and share my screen and show you how to use this calculator and I'm going to describe some of the calculations behind it. Okay, so here from our memberships page, you can get into the calculators. It shows you right here, online calculators, and this will take you to all of the calculators that we have in the future, but so far we only have our first one. So our first one here, calculator, try out the washer pricing calculator. All right, so the first thing it's going to ask you for is a lot of numbers because remember, washer pricing is specific to you. On the Laundromat Millionaire platform and us as laundromat owners, we're really big on knowing your costs so that you can make sure you are making a profit. This is no different. You have to know your costs to be able to determine what price you should charge. But we've tried to make it as easy as possible and just look for some key numbers. And then there's some that we have in there as well. For instance, you'll notice like repairs and supplies are not listed as one of the bills you have to fill in. That's because we estimate it based on your machines, the size of your machines, how many you have. So we've already built that in there. Also, another thing that's kind of built into our formula is that washer pricing is typically about 2/3 of your revenue. And we factor that in as well. So your dryers should bring in at least 30% of your revenue. And that's what these prices are based on. They're also based on that bigger machines typically are more efficient. So they don't use the same amount of utilities per pound of laundry that goes in them. So you'll notice when you see the prices that if you broke it down to the suggested price per pound, it's not consistent across all the machines. Like it's more per pound. If you're using a 20-pound machine, you're paying more per pound than if you were to use that 80-pound machine. So there's a lot behind the calculator that is built in based on our experiences. But basically, the first page, you're just filling in some of your monthly bills for a store. You could do this for if you have a chain of 4 laundromats like we do, and you want them all to be priced the same, you could lump all 4 stores together if you wanted, or you could do this for each individual store if you have it broken out. You just need to be consistent. Whatever you're doing the monthly bills for, if it's for 1 laundromat or for 3 laundromats, then when you go down to the next part, the types of machines needs to be for 1 laundromat or 3 laundromats. So just stay consistent throughout the form. To show you how this works, I'm just going to put in some random numbers. So the first is your rent or mortgage payment. Let's say you pay $3,000 per month for mortgage on this location that we're talking about. For utilities, let's say that your utilities, now notice this says water, gas, electric, sewage, phone, cable. The more you include in it, the more accurate your pricing's going to be to make sure that it covers all those costs. So we're not just using water, we're not just using electric, but we're using all of that together. So let's say your water, electric, gas, phone, all of that we'll say is $3,200. Labor and wages. So this could vary depending on if you're attended, unattended. Do you take a salary? If you're wanting, to take a salary, you're going to count that in. You can probably just take however many hours. An easy way to get this is you can just look at your monthly payroll, or what you could do is just say, okay, if I'm attended 40 hours a week and I pay them $15 an hour, just multiply that out. So however you want to do that. But let's just say labor and wages for a month is $2,600. I'm just making up numbers. I don't even know how reasonable they are. We're just going with it. Debt servicing. This is something that often is not put into pricing, but I decided to, just because we're such a capital intensive business. That's a lot of time a big expense that we have to cover, even though you don't normally count that into your profitability. It's usually earnings before interest and taxes. Debt servicing is still an expense that we're paying every month. So I like to price where I'm incorporating that cost into there. If you don't want to include it, you can just put it at 0. But I'm going to say that, let's say we have a $1,000 a month equipment payment on this laundromat. Insurance, whatever the monthly payment is for that, you can put that in there. And again, I'm just making up numbers here. Whatever you're spending on marketing. So what is your advertising budget per month? Let's say we're budgeting $1,000. All right. And from that, so next thing we need to know is just the machines in that store. So you just put however many of each type of that size machine. And you can see I have ranges because depending on your brand, I know some call them a 20-pounder, some call them a 25-pounder. So I tried to lump the machine size into clumps of similar sizes. So that's why you see a range there. So you just put in however many of those machines you have. If you don't have any 10 to 12 pounds, you can leave that blank or you can fill in 0. Average turns per day. If you're not sure what this is, if you're still a coin operated store, you might not know your average turns per day. If you're a card store, a lot of the software now tells you how many turns per day your machines are doing. But if you don't know, you can estimate what you think. And now remember, your pricing is only going to be as good as your estimates are, because that does factor in how much it's being used.
And I will throw this out there, Carla, just for anyone that doesn't know, if you do have a coin store and you want to track your turns per day, I mean, it's up to you if you want to do this or not, but the way you would actually do that as she populates these things is you're simply going to go into your store and you're going to collect all your 40-pound machines into one bucket, and you're going to take the revenue from those 40-pound machines, let's say over a week or over a month or a quarter, whatever you want to do. And then you're going to say, okay, my 40-pound machines average 4 turns per day. You're just going to divide the number of machines by the revenue. And you're going to do the same thing for each size of machines. If you have 6 top loaders that are 12-pound top loaders, you're going to total up, you're going to add up all the revenue, count that revenue separately, and then you're going to divide that. and it will tell you how many turns per day you have. As she mentioned, it's a lot easier to do electronically, but if you have a coin-based store, you can do that. And you could, if you wanted to, you could just do it 1 or 2 or 3 weeks and then take those numbers. Now, that might not be your accurate, that might not be super accurate over the course of a year, but it's going to at least give you a baseline. What I don't recommend you doing is just kind of guessing or even best case scenarioing it, right? Because once again, garbage in, garbage out. This calculator is only going to be as good as the data that you feed it and how accurate it is.
Okay, so as Dave was talking, I went ahead and just filled in some random numbers for how many of each type machine we had. And then you'll see my average turns per day. I have them varying around 3 to 4. So pretty conservative. That's decent, but not great. So then go on down. The last thing that you need to fill in is your desired profit margin. So this is whatever profit margin you want. Do you want a 10? Are you fine operating a 10% margin, 10% going towards profit? Maybe if you're early in your journey, you're fine with that. If you're more established, you probably want something a little higher. Our kind of standard is 30. So I'm just going to put in a 30% profit margin. And if I messed up something, I can go to start over. But I've basically filled in everything I need to get to the price. I just click next. From there, you will see now it tells me exactly what I should be charging. So you'll notice the different columns. The column you want to look for is this right here, price for profit. That tells you what that machine you should charge to get that 30% profit margin you want. If you remember what I filled in before, it still does some calculations based on if you had some, but we don't. So we just move on past this. For 20 to 25 pound machines, you can see that they are costing me about $2.43 every time someone uses that machine. That's how much of my costs I want that machine to cover, if that makes sense. So it's not really that the machine is costing me that much in utilities and all that kind of stuff. It's saying, okay, for me to be profitable, every time that machine's used, I want $2.43 of that money that they put in is going to cover my rent, my utilities, my debt servicing, all those things that I put in before. And to get the profit margin, I want to charge at least $3.16. So for that 20 to 25 pounder, 30 to 35 pounder. Now we can just kind of run through. You can see I want $3.10 over in the cost per turn. I want to charge at least $4.03. For the 40 to 50 pounder, $5.03. For the 60 to 70, $7.19. And then the 80 to 90, $7.62. The 100-pound plus, I didn't have any of those, so that one's not really relevant. But anyway, that's basically how it works. So you put in your numbers and it tells you what you need to charge for that machine to get the profit margin you want. So enjoy the calculator. Again, it is free to members, so you can go back in anytime, tweak the numbers, or if you want to play around with estimates for now, and then you want to take the time to get your exact numbers and then see how close you were on your estimates, or play around with the profit margin. You can go in there and say, okay, this is what I need to charge. It sells me for a 30%. I need to charge this. Well, what a 20%? What if it was a 50%? So you can just go back and forth, try different numbers and see what it tells you. But don't forget, as Dave said, make sure you are also looking at your value proposition and your market. Just because our calculator says this is what you should charge, can you charge it in your market? You have to look at that. Can you possibly even charge more? What's your value proposition? If you're the best game in town, you might be able to charge more. So again, it's not the end all be all to pricing, but hopefully it helps you out a little.